A billionaire returns to the house he abandoned decades ago, not to remember it, but to erase it. The bulldozers are already scheduled. The papers are signed. This place was supposed to disappear forever. But the moment he steps inside, something stops him cold. What he finds hidden in that ruined house was never meant to be there, and it forces him to confront a past he buried long before the money came. Before we begin, tell us in the comments, what time is it and where are you watching from? He thought he was coming back to tear down a building. Instead, he's about to lose the version of himself he's been hiding behind for years. What happens next will change his life and make you question what success really costs. Let's begin. The black Mercedes pushed through the rusted gates like a knife through old skin. Lawrence Whitmore gripped the wheel tighter than he needed to. His knuckles were white. His jaw was set. He hadn't been here in 47 years, and he planned to make this quick. The driveway was cracked. Weeds had taken over. The house ahead looked like something out of a nightmare. White paint peeling in long strips, windows shattered, the porch sagging like a broken spine. But he didn't care. He was here to destroy it. Lawrence stepped out of the car. His polished shoes crunched against the gravel. The sound felt too loud, too personal, like the house was listening. He pulled the envelope from his jacket pocket. Inside were the demolition papers. Legal, final, signed. This place had haunted him long enough. Then he saw them. 3 kids, standing near the foundation of the house, hands dirty, faces curious, and around them, roses. Bright, red, impossibly alive roses growing in the middle of all this decay. Lawrence froze. "Who are you?" he called out, his voice sharper than he intended. The oldest boy stepped forward. His name was Marcus. Tall for his age, shoulders squared, eyes hard. He didn't look scared. He looked protective. "We live nearby," Marcus said. "We come here sometimes." "Why?" "To take care of it." Lawrence blinked. "Take care of what?" Marcus gestured to the roses. "This. Someone has to." The second boy, Deshaun, stepped closer. He was younger, maybe 13, with a questioning look that made Lawrence uncomfortable. "Why did you leave it like this?" Deshaun asked. Lawrence's chest tightened. "That's none of your business." "You own it, don't you?" Deshaun pressed. "So why let it fall apart?" Lawrence didn't answer. He couldn't. The youngest, a girl named Keisha, knelt by the roses. She was small, maybe 8 or 9, and she held a single flower between her fingers like it was made of glass. She looked up at him with eyes that cut straight through his suit, his money, his carefully built walls. "These were here when we found it," she said softly. "We just kept them alive." Lawrence felt something crack inside him. He didn't know what to say. He had come here to erase this place, to bulldoze it into the ground and forget it ever existed. But these kids, strangers, had been caring for it for years. "I'm tearing this house down," he said, his voice colder now, trying to regain control. "You need to leave." Marcus didn't move. "Why?" "Because it's mine." "Then why didn't you come back sooner?" The question hit like a punch. Lawrence's hand tightened around the envelope. He could feel the edges digging into his palm. "I stayed away because I had to," he said. But even as the words left his mouth, they felt hollow. Deshaun shook his head. "That's not a reason." "You don't understand? Then explain it." Lawrence opened his mouth, then closed it. What could he say? That he had run from this place because it reminded him of everything he lost? That he built an empire in California, in Texas, in New York? Places with power, with money, with people who didn't ask questions, just so he wouldn't have to think about this house. That he was too proud to admit he had abandoned the one place that mattered. Kesha stood up. She walked toward him slowly, the rose still in her hand. She stopped a few feet away and held it out to him. "You can have it," she said. Lawrence stared at the flower. His throat felt tight. "Why are you giving this to me?" "Because you look sad." The words landed like stones. Lawrence's vision blurred. He reached out and took the rose, his fingers brushing hers. The petals were soft, fragile, alive. And for the first time in decades, Lawrence felt something break inside him that he didn't know how to fix. He looked at the house again. The broken windows, the sagging porch, the roses growing where they shouldn't. He looked at the envelope in his hand. Then he looked at the kids. Marcus, Deshawn, Kesha. 3 strangers who cared more about this place than he ever had. Lawrence's voice came out as a whisper. "I'm sorry." Marcus tilted his head. "For what?" "For leaving." The wind picked up. The roses swayed. And somewhere deep in the house, something creaked, like the walls themselves were listening. Lawrence folded the envelope and slipped it back into his pocket. "I'm not tearing it down," he said quietly. "Not yet." Kesha smiled. And for the first time in 47 years, Lawrence Whitmore felt like he had come home. If you've made it this far, you already see this isn't your typical story. A billionaire shows up to demolish his past, but 3 kids and a garden of roses stop him cold. Now here's the truth. Only 1% of people watching are actually subscribed. If you haven't hit that button yet, I need you to do it right now. Here's why. We're just getting started. Lawrence is about to walk into that house and find something that will shatter everything he thought he knew about his parents, his past, and himself. The kids are hiding secrets too, and the decision he makes next will cost him everything. Don't miss it. Hit subscribe, smash that notification bell, and stay locked in. Your support is what keeps these stories coming, and trust me, you don't want to miss what happens next. Thank you for subscribing, and now let's continue with the story. He thought walking away from the demolition would bring him peace. But the moment Lawrence turned his back on those papers, a new weight settled on his chest, heavier than any contract he'd ever signed. The kids were still watching him. The roses were still blooming. And somewhere in the ruins of that house, a secret was waiting. A secret that would prove he hadn't just abandoned a building. He'd abandoned everything that made him human. What happens next will shatter the life he built and force him to face the one question he's been running from for 47 years. Who was he before the money? Let's continue. Lawrence stood frozen in the driveway, the rose still in his hand. The kids hadn't moved. They were waiting for something. An explanation, maybe, or permission. He didn't know which. "You said you come here often?" Lawrence asked, breaking the silence. Marcus nodded. "Every week, sometimes more." "Why?" "Because no one else does." The answer stung more than it should have. Lawrence looked past them toward the house. The front door hung crooked on its hinges. The porch steps were rotted through. But the roses around the foundation were perfect, healthy, thriving. "Who taught you to care for them?" Lawrence asked. Kesha spoke up. "We taught ourselves. We found a book in the library. It had pictures." Lawrence's chest tightened again. These kids had done more for this place in a few months than he'd done in nearly 5 decades. "Where are your parents?" he asked carefully. The air shifted. Marcus's jaw clenched. Deshawn looked at the ground. Kesha's smile faded. "We don't talk about that," Marcus said, his voice flat. Lawrence didn't push. He recognized that tone. He'd used it himself for years. "I understand," he said quietly. Marcus looked up, surprised. "Do you?" Lawrence nodded. "More than you know." For a moment, neither of them spoke. The wind rustled through the tall grass. A crow cawed in the distance. Lawrence could feel the weight of the house behind him, pressing against his back like a hand. "Can we go inside?" Deshawn asked suddenly. Lawrence's heart skipped. "Inside?" "We've never been in. The door's always locked." "You've been coming here for months and never went in?" Marcus shook his head. "It's not ours. We didn't have permission." Lawrence almost laughed. These kids had more respect for his property than he'd ever had. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a set of keys. Old, rusted. He wasn't even sure they still worked. "Come on," he said. They followed him up the broken porch steps. Lawrence tested each board before putting his full weight down. The wood groaned but held. He slid the key into the lock. It stuck. He jiggled it, twisted, and finally, with a loud click, the door swung open. The smell hit him first. Dust, mold, decay. But underneath it all, something else. Something familiar. Lavender. His mother used to keep lavender sachets in every room. The inside was worse than the outside. Furniture covered in white sheets like ghosts. Wallpaper peeling in long strips. The ceiling sagging in places. But the bones of the house were still strong. Still standing. Kesha stepped inside carefully, her eyes wide. "It's like a museum. More like a tomb," Lawrence muttered. Deshawn moved toward the fireplace. Above it hung a large frame, covered in dust. He reached up and wiped it clean with his sleeve. A family photo. Lawrence's breath caught. He hadn't seen that picture in decades. His mother, his father, and a young boy, maybe 7 years old, standing between them, smiling, happy, innocent. "Is that you?" Deshawn asked. Lawrence couldn't speak. He just nodded. Marcus stepped closer, studying the photo. "You look different." "I was different. What changed?" Lawrence turned away from the picture. Everything. He walked deeper into the house. The kids followed. They moved through the living room, the kitchen, the hallway. Every step brought back memories Lawrence had spent a fortune trying to forget. His father teaching him to fish in the backyard. His mother baking bread on Sunday mornings. The sound of laughter echoing through these walls. Then he saw it. At the end of the hallway. A door. Closed, untouched. His old room. Lawrence stopped. His hand hovered over the doorknob. "You okay?" Marcus asked. Lawrence didn't answer. He pushed the door open. The room was smaller than he remembered. A bed against the wall. A desk by the window. Posters faded and torn. But on the desk, something that made his heart stop. A letter, folded neatly. His name written on the front in handwriting he knew instantly. His mother's. Lawrence's hands shook as he picked it up. The paper was yellowed with age. Fragile. But the words were clear. "My dearest Lawrence, if you're reading this, it means you came back. I always knew you would. You were always too stubborn to stay away forever. I know you're angry. I know you blame yourself for what happened. But you need to understand. None of it was your fault. Your father and I made our choices. We lived our lives the way we wanted. And we were happy. But you, my sweet boy, you ran. You ran from this house, from this town, from everything that reminded you of us. And I don't blame you. Grief makes us do things we don't understand. But please, Lawrence, don't let pride keep you away forever. This house isn't just wood and stone. It's love. It's memory. It's home. Come back when you're ready. The door will always be open. All my love, Mom. Lawrence's vision blurred. Tears fell onto the paper, smudging the ink. He sank onto the edge of the bed, the letter trembling in his hands. Kesha sat down beside him. She didn't say anything. She just rested her small hand on his arm. Marcus and Deshawn stood in the doorway, silent, respectful. Lawrence wiped his eyes and looked at them. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I'm so sorry." "For what?" Kesha asked softly. "For running. For being a coward. For letting this place fall apart." Marcus stepped forward. "You're here now?" Lawrence looked at him. "Is that enough?" "I don't know," Marcus said honestly. "But it's a start." Lawrence folded the letter carefully and slipped it into his pocket beside the demolition papers. 2 pieces of paper. 2 futures. Only one could survive. He stood up, his decision already made. "We're not tearing this house down," he said firmly. "We're bringing it back to life." Kesha's face lit up. Deshawn grinned. Marcus nodded slowly, a flicker of respect in his eyes. And for the first time in 47 years, Lawrence Whitmore felt like he was exactly where he was supposed to be. Lawrence thought finding his mother's letter would give him closure. But closure isn't what he got, because the moment he decided to save the house instead of destroy it, the real questions started flooding in. Questions he'd been too rich, too busy, too proud to ask. Who were these kids really? Why did they care so much about a stranger's broken-down house? And what would it cost him to finally do the right thing after decades of running? The answers were about to turn his carefully controlled world completely upside down. Keep watching. Lawrence stood in the middle of his childhood bedroom, the letter pressed against his chest like a shield. The kids were still there, watching him with a mix of curiosity and something else he couldn't quite name. Trust, maybe. Or hope. "So what now?" Deshawn asked, breaking the silence. Lawrence looked around the room. The peeling wallpaper, the cracked window, the dust covering everything like a blanket of shame. "Now we fix it," Lawrence said. Marcus raised an eyebrow. "You know how to fix a house?" "No," Lawrence admitted. "But I know how to hire people who can." "That's not the same thing," Marcus said. Lawrence turned to face him. "What do you mean?" "I mean, you can't just throw money at it and walk away. That's what you did before." The words hit like a slap. Lawrence's first instinct was to get defensive, to remind this kid who he was talking to. But he stopped himself, because Marcus was right. "You're right," Lawrence said quietly. "I did walk away. But I'm not walking away this time." "How do we know?" Deshawn challenged. "You don't," Lawrence said honestly. "But I'm asking you to give me a chance to prove it." The 3 kids exchanged glances. Some silent conversation passed between them. Finally, Marcus nodded. "Okay," he said. "But we help. We're not just watching from the sidelines." Lawrence almost argued. These were kids. They didn't know about construction, about permits, about the 1,000 details that went into restoring a house. But then he remembered the roses. They'd kept those alive when he'd let everything else die. "Deal," Lawrence said, extending his hand. Marcus shook it. His grip was firm, strong, the handshake of someone who'd had to grow up too fast. They walked back through the house together, Lawrence making mental notes of everything that needed work. The list was endless. New roof, new floors, new plumbing, new electrical. It would cost a fortune. But for the first time in years, Money felt like the least important thing. When they stepped back outside, the sun was starting to set. The light hit the roses at an angle that made them glow. "Where do you live?" Lawrence asked. "I can drive you home." The kids went quiet again, that same uncomfortable silence from before. "We're okay," Marcus said quickly. "We can walk. It's getting dark. We know the way." Lawrence studied them carefully. Their clothes were clean, but worn. Their shoes had holes. And now that he was paying attention, he noticed how thin they all looked. "When's the last time you ate?" he asked. Kesha looked down. Deshaun shifted his weight. Marcus's jaw tightened. "We're fine," Marcus said. "That's not what I asked. Why do you care?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. Lawrence could have deflected, could have made an excuse and driven away in his Mercedes, back to his hotel in Manhattan, back to his life of board meetings and stock reports. But he didn't. "Because you cared about this house when I didn't," Lawrence said. "Because you saw something worth saving when I only saw something worth destroying. And because I know what it's like to be alone and too proud to ask for help." Marcus stared at him for a long moment. Then, slowly, his shoulders dropped. "We haven't eaten since yesterday," he admitted quietly. Lawrence's heart clenched. "Get in the car." "We don't need—" "Get in the car," Lawrence repeated, firmer this time. "Please." They hesitated, then climbed into the Mercedes. Kesha ran her hand over the leather seats like they were made of silk. Deshaun stared at the dashboard with wide eyes. Marcus sat stiff and uncomfortable, like he was waiting for the catch. Lawrence drove them to a diner 20 minutes away. It was the kind of place he would have avoided in his normal life. Checkered floors, torn vinyl booths, a flickering neon sign. But the smell of burgers and fries filled the air, and the kids' faces lit up the moment they walked in. They ordered everything: burgers, fries, milkshakes, pancakes. Lawrence watched them eat like they hadn't seen food in days, because they probably hadn't. "Where are your parents?" Lawrence asked again, gentler this time. Marcus set down his burger. "Dead. Car accident. 3 years ago." Lawrence's chest tightened. "I'm sorry." "It's fine." "It's not fine." Marcus looked up, surprised by the firmness in Lawrence's voice. "It's not fine," Lawrence repeated. "And you don't have to pretend it is." Deshaun spoke up. "We're with our aunt now. She works 2 jobs. She tries, but there's not enough," Lawrence finished. Deshaun nodded. Kesha wiped milkshake from her mouth. "She doesn't know we go to the house. She'd be mad if she found out." "Why?" "Because she thinks we should focus on school, not waste time on broken things." Lawrence felt something twist inside him. Taking care of something isn't a waste of time. "That's what we told her," Marcus said. "But she doesn't listen." They finished eating in silence. Lawrence paid the bill and drove them home, a small apartment complex on the edge of town. The kind of place where the paint was peeling and the parking lot had more potholes than pavement. Before they got out, Lawrence reached into his wallet and pulled out $500. "Here," he said, handing it to Marcus. Marcus stared at the money like it was a bomb. "We can't take this." "Yes, you can. We're not charity." "I'm not offering charity," Lawrence said. "I'm offering payment. You've been taking care of my property for months. This is what you're owed." Marcus hesitated, then slowly took the money. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet," Lawrence said. "Because starting tomorrow, you're going to earn every penny. We've got a house to rebuild." For the first time all day, Marcus smiled. A real smile. Small, but genuine. As they walked toward their apartment, Kesha turned back and waved. Lawrence waved back, watching until they disappeared inside. Then he sat alone in his car, in the dark, in a parking lot that smelled like garbage and regret. And he realized something that terrified him. He wasn't just fixing a house. He was trying to fix himself. And he had no idea if it was possible. Lawrence thought buying them dinner would ease his guilt. But guilt doesn't disappear with a meal and a few $100s. Because the next morning, when he pulled up to that apartment complex to pick them up, what he saw made his blood run cold. The life these kids were living wasn't just hard. It was impossible. And the decision he was about to make would either save them or destroy everything he'd spent 47 years building. Some choices don't give you time to think. They demand an answer right now. This was one of them. Lawrence arrived at 7 in the morning. The sun was barely up. He'd spent the whole night in his hotel room staring at the ceiling, his mother's letter on the nightstand, the demolition papers in the trash. He couldn't stop thinking about Marcus's face when he took that money. The shame mixed with relief. The pride fighting against desperation. Lawrence knew that look. He'd worn it himself once. He parked outside the apartment complex and texted the number Marcus had scribbled on a napkin the night before. Within minutes, all 3 kids came rushing out. They looked different in the morning light. More tired? More real? Ready to work? Lawrence asked as they climbed in. Born ready, Deshawn said, grinning. They drove back to the house in silence. When they arrived, Lawrence handed them each a pair of work gloves he'd bought at a hardware store on the way. First thing we need to do is clear out the inside, Lawrence said. Get rid of anything that's broken beyond repair. Save anything that can be fixed. Marcus nodded. Where do we start? The living room. They worked for hours, hauling out broken furniture, ripping up ruined carpet, sweeping decades of dust and debris. It was hard, dirty work. But the kids didn't complain. Not once. Lawrence watched them as they worked. The way Marcus organized everything into piles, keep, fix, trash. The way Deshawn asked questions about every single item, wanting to know its story. The way Kesha carefully wiped down the things worth saving, treating each piece like it mattered. Around noon, they took a break. Lawrence ordered pizza. They sat on the front porch, eating in the shade, the rose garden blooming just a few feet away. Can I ask you something? Deshawn said, wiping grease from his fingers. Go ahead. Why'd you really leave? Lawrence set down his slice. He'd been expecting this question, dreading it. My father got sick, Lawrence said slowly. Cancer. We didn't have money for treatment. We tried everything, sold the car, took out loans, borrowed from family. But it wasn't enough. The kids went quiet, listening. He died when I was 16, Lawrence continued. And my mother, she tried to hold it together. But the medical bills buried us. We lost everything. The house went into foreclosure. She moved in with her sister in Ohio. I got a scholarship to college and left. And you never came back? Marcus asked. Lawrence shook his head. I told myself I'd come back when I made it big, when I had enough money to buy the house back and fix everything. But by the time I did, my mother was gone too. Heart attack, and the house had been sitting empty for years. So why not fix it then? Deshawn pressed. Lawrence looked at the house, at the broken windows and sagging porch. Because I was angry. At the world. At myself. At this place for reminding me of everything I'd lost. So I bought it just to let it rot. Kesha's voice was small, That's sad. Yeah, Lawrence said quietly. It is. Marcus stood up, brushing crumbs from his jeans. Well, we're not letting it rot anymore. They went back to work. And something shifted in Lawrence. Watching these kids fight for a house that wasn't even theirs, he realized how much time he'd wasted fighting against his own past. By evening, the living room was cleared. The bones of the house were visible now, the structure his father had built with his own hands, still strong, still standing. Lawrence drove the kids home again. But this time, when they pulled up to the apartment complex, he didn't let them leave right away. I want to meet your aunt, he said. Marcus froze. Why? Because if we're going to keep working together, she needs to know what's going on. She won't understand. Then help me make her understand. Marcus hesitated, then nodded. Okay, but don't say we need help. She hates that. They led Lawrence up 3 flights of stairs to apartment 3C. The hallway smelled like old carpet and fried food. Marcus knocked twice. A woman in her late 30s answered. She was thin, tired-looking, with kind eyes that went sharp the moment she saw Lawrence. Who's this? She asked. I'm Lawrence Whitmore, he said, extending his hand. I own the old house your nieces and nephew have been taking care of. Her eyes narrowed. The one that's falling apart? Yes, ma'am. She looked at the kids. I told you to stay away from there. We know, Marcus said quickly. But I asked them to help me restore it, Lawrence interrupted. And I'm paying them for their work. The aunt crossed her arms. I don't need your charity. It's not charity, it's employment. They've been doing good work, and I'd like to keep working with them, with your permission. She studied him carefully, suspicion written all over her face. Why? Because they care about something I gave up on, and they're teaching me how to care again. The aunt was quiet for a long moment. Then she looked at Marcus. Is this what you want? Marcus nodded. Yes. She sighed. Fine. But schoolwork comes first. And if I hear about any trouble, there won't be any trouble, Lawrence promised. She looked him dead in the eye. There better not be. As Lawrence drove back to his hotel, his phone rang. It was his assistant in New York. Mr. Whitmore, the board meeting is in 2 days. They need you back. Lawrence looked at the rearview mirror, at the town disappearing behind him. Tell them I'm not coming. Sir? I'm staying here, indefinitely. There was a pause. Are you sure that's wise? Lawrence thought about the house, the kids, his mother's letter. No, he said honestly, but I'm doing it anyway. He hung up, and for the first time in decades, Lawrence Whitmore chose something other than success. He chose home. Lawrence just turned his back on a billion-dollar empire to restore a house that most people would bulldoze without a second thought. His board thinks he's lost his mind. His business partners are calling non-stop, but none of that matters anymore. Because what he's about to discover in the walls of that old house will prove that some things are worth more than every dollar he's ever made, and it's going to cost him everything he thought he wanted. The truth has been waiting 47 years to surface. Today, it finally does. Let's go. Lawrence spent the next 3 days working on the house from sunrise to sunset. He'd never worked with his hands like this before. Not in decades. His palms blistered. His back ached. But he didn't stop. The kids showed up every day after school. Marcus always arrived first, Deshawn right behind him, and Kesha trailing with her backpack still on, ready to work before she even set it down. They'd developed a rhythm. Marcus handled the heavy lifting. Deshawn measured and marked where things needed to go. Kesha swept and cleaned, her small hands perfect for getting into tight corners. And Lawrence? Lawrence learned to follow their lead. On the fourth day, they started tearing down the kitchen wall. It was rotted through, unsalvageable. As Marcus pulled away a section of drywall, something fell out and clattered to the floor. A metal box. Everyone froze. "What is that?" Deshawn asked. Lawrence bent down and picked it up. It was old, rusted at the edges, with a small lock that had corroded away. He pried it open. Inside were photographs, dozens of them. His hands trembled as he lifted the first one. It was his father, young and smiling, standing in front of this very house. The paint was fresh. The porch was new. Everything looked alive. "That's your dad?" Kesha asked, peering over his shoulder. Lawrence nodded, unable to speak. He flipped through more photos. His mother in the garden, his father teaching him to ride a bike, family dinners, Christmas mornings, birthday parties, all the moments he'd tried to forget. But there was something else in the box. A small envelope. His name was written on it in his father's handwriting. Lawrence's breath caught. "You okay?" Marcus asked. Lawrence opened the envelope with shaking hands. Inside was a letter, the ink faded but still readable. "Son, if you're reading this, I'm already gone. Your mother probably is too. And I'm guessing you've stayed away from this house for a long time. I don't blame you. Losing me was hard. Losing this house was harder. I know you think you failed us, that if you'd been older, smarter, richer, you could have saved me. Saved everything. But son, you need to know something. I didn't lose my life to cancer. I lived my life despite it. Every single day with you and your mother was a gift, and I wouldn't trade a single moment for anything. This house isn't just wood and nails. It's every laugh we shared, every meal we ate together, every bedtime story I told you. It's love, built one day at a time. Don't let pride or guilt or regret keep you from coming home. Don't let my death make you forget how to live. I'm proud of you, son. I always will be. Love, Dad." Lawrence's vision blurred. Tears fell onto the paper, smudging the words. His chest heaved with sobs he'd been holding back for 47 years. Marcus, Deshawn, and Kesha stood quietly, giving him space. But Kesha, unable to hold back, walked over and wrapped her small arms around his waist. Lawrence broke. He sank to his knees, clutching the letter, and cried like he hadn't cried since he was a boy. All the grief he'd buried, all the shame, all the years of running, it poured out of him in waves. When he finally caught his breath, Marcus was kneeling beside him. "He's right, you know," Marcus said quietly. Lawrence looked up. "About what?" "About not letting guilt keep you away. My parents died 3 years ago, and I was angry for a long time. Angry at them for leaving. Angry at myself for not saying goodbye. But being angry didn't bring them back. It just made everything hurt worse." Lawrence wiped his eyes. "How'd you move past it?" "I didn't," Marcus admitted. "Not completely. But I stopped running from it. I started taking care of things they cared about. Like Deshawn and Kesha. Like this house. It doesn't fix everything, but it helps." Lawrence looked at the letter in his hands, then at the kids around him. "Thank you," he whispered. Marcus nodded. "Come on, we've still got work to do." They spent the rest of the day finishing the kitchen wall. But something had shifted. Lawrence wasn't just restoring a house anymore. He was restoring himself. That evening, as the sun set and the kids packed up to leave, Lawrence made a decision. "I want to set up college funds for you," he said suddenly. The kids stopped. Marcus turned slowly. What? College funds. For all three of you. Full tuition, room and board, everything. Deshawn's eyes went wide. Are you serious? Completely. Marcus shook his head. We can't accept that. Why not? Because it's too much. It's not enough, Lawrence said firmly. You've given me something I thought I'd lost forever. Let me give you something in return. Kesha's face lit up. Does that mean I can be a doctor? Lawrence smiled. It means you can be anything you want. Marcus looked conflicted. Lawrence could see the pride warring with the need. Finally, Marcus extended his hand. Thank you, he said, his voice thick with emotion. Lawrence shook it. No, thank you. As they drove away, Lawrence stood alone in the driveway, watching the taillights disappear. His phone buzzed. Another call from New York. Another message from the board. He silenced it. This was where he belonged now. Not in a boardroom, not in a penthouse. Here, in the ruins of his past, building something real for the first time in his life. He looked at the house, at the roses, at the stars beginning to appear overhead. And he felt something he hadn't felt in 47 years. Peace. Lawrence thought the hardest part was over. He'd faced his past, made peace with his parents' memory, and committed to helping the kids who saved him. But he was wrong. Because the moment word got out that a billionaire was pouring money into 3 orphaned kids and a worthless piece of property, the vultures started circling. And what they were about to do would test whether Lawrence's transformation was real, or just another rich man's guilt trip that would crumble under pressure. The fight for his soul was just beginning. Stay with me. Lawrence was replacing floorboards in the hallway when his phone wouldn't stop ringing. He'd been ignoring it all morning, but finally he picked up. Lawrence, we need to talk. It was Richard Chen, his business partner of 20 years. His voice was sharp. I'm busy, Richard. Busy throwing away your fortune on a shack and 3 random kids. Lawrence's grip tightened on the phone. Excuse me? It's all over the news. Billionaire Lawrence Whitmore abandons empire to play house with orphans. The board is furious. Investors are getting nervous. You're making us look unstable. I don't care what they think. Well, you should, because they're calling for a vote. They want you out. Lawrence stood up, sawdust falling from his jeans. Let them vote. Lawrence, listen to yourself. You're destroying everything we built over some midlife crisis. It's not a crisis. It's a correction. A correction? Richard laughed bitterly. You're sabotaging a billion-dollar company because you feel guilty about a house. I'm choosing what matters. What matters is the legacy we built, the jobs we created, the empire. The empire I built on my parents' graves. Lawrence cut in, his voice cold. I ran from everything real to chase money. And I'm done. There was silence on the other end. Then Richard spoke, quieter now. If you don't come back by the end of the week, the board will force you out. You'll lose controlling interest. Everything. Then I lose it. Richard hung up without another word. Lawrence set the phone down, his hand shaking. Not from fear, from clarity. He'd made his choice. That afternoon, the kids arrived to find Lawrence sitting on the porch steps, staring at nothing. You good? Marcus asked, setting down his backpack. Lawrence looked up. My company's trying to kick me out. Deshawn's eyes went wide. Can they do that? If I don't go back to New York by Friday, yeah. Kesha sat beside him. Are you going back? Lawrence looked at the house, at the progress they'd made, the new floors, the patched roof, the fresh paint on the porch. No, he said. I'm staying. Marcus frowned. But won't you lose everything? I'll lose money, buildings, stocks. But I won't lose this. He gestured to the house, to them. This is the first real thing I've had in 47 years. I'm not walking away from it. That's a lot to give up, Marcus said carefully. It's not giving up. It's letting go. They worked in silence for a while. But Lawrence could feel the weight of the decision settling over all of them. He wasn't just changing his own life anymore. He was dragging these kids into his mess. Around 5, a black SUV pulled up the driveway. 2 men in suits stepped out. "Lawrence Whitmore," one of them called. Lawrence walked over, the kids trailing behind. "That's me. We're here on behalf of Whitmore Industries. The board has requested you return to New York immediately for an emergency meeting. Tell the board I decline." The man pulled out a folder. "Then we're authorized to deliver this." Lawrence took it. Inside were legal documents, a vote of no confidence, a motion to remove him as CEO, signatures from every board member except one, his own. "They're serious," the second man said. "If you don't contest this by Friday, you're out. Completely." Lawrence looked at the papers, then handed them back. "I'm not contesting it." Both men looked shocked. "Sir, do you understand what you're giving up?" "Perfectly. This is financial suicide." Lawrence smiled, a weight lifting off his shoulders. "No, this is freedom." The men exchanged glances, then got back in the SUV and drove away. Marcus stared at Lawrence. "You just walked away from billions." "No," Lawrence said. "I walked towards something worth more." Deshawn shook his head in disbelief. "My aunt's going to think you're crazy." "She might be right." Kesha tugged on Lawrence's sleeve. "Does this mean you're staying forever?" Lawrence knelt down to her level. "As long as you'll have me." She threw her arms around his neck. "Forever, then." That night, Lawrence couldn't sleep. He lay in his hotel bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering if he'd just made the biggest mistake of his life. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Saw the news. Proud of you, son." Lawrence's heart stopped. He stared at the message. It had to be a prank, some cruel joke. But then a photo came through, his mother's grave, fresh roses laid at the headstone. And beneath it, another message. She'd be proud too. A friend who remembers. Lawrence's vision blurred. Someone out there remembered. Someone understood. He texted back, "Who is this?" No response. But it didn't matter. Because in that moment, Lawrence knew he'd made the right choice. The next morning, he woke up with a clarity he'd never felt before. He packed his bags, checked out of the hotel, and drove straight to the house. When the kids arrived after school, they found Lawrence hammering nails into the new porch railing. "You're here early," Marcus said. Lawrence looked up. "I'm here permanently. I'm not going back to New York. Not now, not ever." "Where are you going to stay?" Lawrence gestured to the house. "Here, once we get it livable." Deshawn grinned. "You're really doing this." "I really am." They worked until dark, and when they finally stopped, exhausted and covered in dust, Lawrence looked around at what they'd built together. It wasn't finished yet, but it was home. And for the first time in 47 years, that was enough. Lawrence burned every bridge to stay. He gave up his company, his fortune, his reputation, everything the world told him mattered. But cutting ties with his past was the easy part. Because now he has to figure out how to actually live in this new life he's chosen. And when the kid's aunt shows up unannounced with questions he can't answer, Lawrence realizes that good intentions aren't enough. He's about to learn that redemption isn't a decision you make once. It's a promise you have to keep every single day. And some promises are harder than others. Keep watching. 3 weeks had passed since Lawrence walked away from Whitmore Industries. The story had made headlines everywhere. Billionaire abandons empire for childhood home. The business world called him insane. His former colleagues stopped returning his calls. His bank accounts were frozen in legal battles. But every morning, Lawrence woke up in a sleeping bag on the floor of his half-restored house, and he smiled. The kids came every day. They'd finished the living room, the kitchen, and 2 bedrooms. The house was starting to look like a home again. But on this particular Tuesday, everything changed. Lawrence was installing new kitchen cabinets when he heard a car door slam outside. He looked through the window and saw the kid's aunt marching up the driveway, her face set in a hard line. This wasn't a friendly visit. Lawrence met her at the door. "Miss Patterson, is everything okay?" "No," she said flatly. "Everything is not okay." Marcus, Deshawn, and Kesha appeared behind Lawrence, their faces worried. "Aunt Teresa," Marcus started. "Not now," she cut him off. She looked at Lawrence, her eyes blazing. "Can we talk? Alone?" Lawrence nodded and led her to the porch. The kids stayed inside, but he could see them watching through the window. Teresa crossed her arms. "I need you to be honest with me. What's your angle?" "My angle? With my kids. Rich men don't just show up and start throwing money around unless they want something." "So what is it? Tax write-off? Publicity stunt? Some weird ego thing?" Lawrence felt the accusation like a punch. "It's none of those things." "Then what?" "Because from where I'm standing, this looks like a man having a breakdown using my family as therapy." "That's not—" "I read about you," Teresa continued, pulling out her phone. "Billionaire walks away from everything. Board thinks you've lost your mind. Business partners calling you unstable. And now you're here, playing house with 3 kids who aren't yours, making promises you might not keep." Lawrence's jaw tightened. "I'm keeping every promise I've made." "For how long? Until you get bored? Until the guilt wears off? Until you realize this isn't the fairy tale you thought it would be?" "I'm not going anywhere." Teresa stepped closer, her voice dropping. "My sister died in a car crash with her husband, and I became a mother overnight to 3 kids I wasn't ready for. I work 2 jobs. I barely sleep. I can't give them everything they need, but I show up. Every single day, I show up." Her voice cracked. "So don't you dare come in here with your money and your guilt and make them believe in something that's going to disappear the second real life gets hard." Lawrence's throat tightened. Everything she was saying, he'd thought it himself 100 times. "You're right," he said quietly. Teresa blinked. "What?" "You're right. I can't promise I won't mess this up. I can't promise I'll be perfect. I've already failed more people than I can count." He paused, meeting her eyes. "But I can promise I'm not leaving, not this time." Words are easy. Then watch me. Test me. I don't need you to trust me right now, but give me the chance to earn it." Teresa studied him for a long moment. "Why them? Why my kids?" Lawrence looked through the window at Marcus, Deshawn, and Kesha. "Because they saw something in this broken house worth saving. And they made me believe I could be worth saving too." Teresa's expression softened slightly, but her guard stayed up. "The college funds, are those real?" "Completely, already set up. Legally protected. No matter what happens to me, those funds are theirs. And if I say I want you to back off, leave them alone. Lawrence's heart sank, but he nodded. Then I will. They're your family, not mine. Teresa was quiet for a long time. Then she looked at the house, at the new roof, the fresh paint, the roses blooming by the foundation. They talk about you constantly, she said finally. Marcus says you listen to him. Deshawn says you answer every question he asks. Kesha says you make her feel safe. She paused. They haven't smiled this much since their parents died. Lawrence didn't know what to say. Teresa sighed. I still don't trust you. But they do. And maybe that's enough for now. Relief flooded through him. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. You screw this up, and I will make your life hell. Understood. Understood. Teresa called the kids outside. They rushed onto the porch, nervous energy radiating off them. Mr. Whitmore and I had a talk, Teresa said. And we've come to an agreement. You can keep helping with the house, but... She held up a finger. Schoolwork comes first, always. And you check in with me every single day. Marcus's face broke into a grin. Really? Really? But one slip in your grades and we're done. Got it? All three kids nodded vigorously. Teresa looked at Lawrence one more time. Don't make me regret this. I won't. She drove away, leaving Lawrence standing with the kids on the porch. That was intense, Deshawn said. She was protecting you, Lawrence said. That's what family does. Marcus looked at him. Is that what we are now? Family? Lawrence felt emotion rise in his chest. If you'll have me. Kesha grabbed his hand. We already decided. You're stuck with us. Lawrence laughed, blinking back tears. Best thing I've ever been stuck with. They went back to work. But something had shifted. The house wasn't just a project anymore. It was a foundation for something bigger, something real. That night, as Lawrence locked up, he found another envelope tucked under the roses. Inside was a single sentence in his mother's handwriting. Home is where you choose to stay. Lawrence held the note to his chest and looked at the house, at the lights glowing through the windows, at the sound of laughter echoing from inside where the kids were cleaning up. He'd made his choice, and he was finally home. Lawrence finally has permission to be part of their lives. The aunt approved. The kids trust him. The house is almost finished. Everything should feel perfect. But it doesn't. Because late last night, Lawrence got a call that's about to blow everything apart. His former company isn't just cutting him out. They're coming after him. And the lawsuit they're filing could take away the one thing he has left. The house. The place where this entire transformation began is about to be ripped away. And there's nothing his money can do to stop it. The clock just started ticking. Let's go. Lawrence was painting the last bedroom when his lawyer called. He almost didn't answer. He'd been avoiding legal calls for weeks, letting the business world tear itself apart without him. But something made him pick up. Lawrence, we have a problem, his lawyer said. No greeting, no small talk. What kind of problem? The kind that could cost you the house. Lawrence froze, paintbrush mid-stroke. What are you talking about? Whitmore Industries is filing a claim against you. They're arguing that you purchased the property using company funds years ago as a tax shelter. They want it seized as a corporate asset. That's insane. I bought this house with my own money. Can you prove it? Lawrence's mind raced. It was decades ago. The records are exactly what they're counting on. If you can't produce clear documentation showing personal funds were used, they can make a case. And given your current legal position, a judge might side with them. Lawrence felt the walls closing in. How long do I have? Court date is set for 2 weeks. If we lose, they can force you to vacate immediately. No. The word came out harder than he intended. That's not happening. Then we need to find those records. Fast. Lawrence hung up and sank onto the floor, his back against the freshly painted wall. Everything he'd built here, everything he'd fought for, could disappear in 2 weeks. The front door opened. The kids walked in, their voices bright with conversation. And they stopped when they saw his face. "What's wrong?" Marcus asked immediately. Lawrence tried to smile. "Nothing, just some legal stuff?" "Doesn't look like nothing," Deshawn said. Lawrence hesitated. He didn't want to worry them, but he'd promised honesty. "My old company is trying to take the house," he said quietly. Kesha's face fell. "Can they do that?" "They're going to try." Marcus's expression hardened. "What do you need?" "Old financial records. Proof that I bought this place with my own money, not company funds. But that was 40 years ago." "Where would they be?" Deshawn asked. "I don't know. My mother handled most of the paperwork back then. When she died, everything went to storage. But I haven't touched those boxes in decades." "Where's the storage?" Lawrence pulled out his phone and scrolled through old emails. "Connecticut, a facility outside Hartford." Marcus grabbed his backpack. "Then let's go." "It's a 4-hour drive." "So? We've got time." Lawrence looked at these kids, at their determination, their loyalty, their refusal to give up. Something broke open in his chest. "Okay," he said. "Let's go." They piled into the Mercedes and drove north. The kids had never been to Connecticut before. They stared out the windows as the landscape changed from small-town streets to highways to sprawling suburbs. "Have you been back there since your mom died?" Marcus asked. "No. I paid for the storage and forgot about it." "That's a lot of forgetting," Deshawn said quietly. Lawrence glanced at him in the rearview mirror. "Yeah, it is." They arrived at the storage facility just before closing. The manager, an older man with gray hair and suspicious eyes, checked Lawrence's ID 3 times before handing over the key. "Unit 47. Haven't seen anyone ask for that one in years." Lawrence led the kids down a long hallway of identical metal doors. When they reached Unit 47, his hand shook as he inserted the key. The door rolled up with a screech. Inside were boxes, dozens of them, stacked floor to ceiling, covered in dust. "Whoa," Kesha whispered. Lawrence stepped inside. The smell hit him immediately. Old paper, mothballs, memories. He hadn't been ready for this. "Where do we start?" Marcus asked. "I don't know. Anywhere." They split up, each taking a section. Lawrence opened the first box and found photo albums. His mother's handwriting labeled each one. Lawrence, age 5. Summer 1976. Christmas 1981. He couldn't breathe. "You okay?" Deshawn asked. Lawrence nodded, even though he wasn't. He closed that box and moved to another. Old tax returns, medical bills, letters from the bank. Hours passed. The sun set outside. The facility lights flickered on. Then Kesha shouted from the back corner, "I found something." Everyone rushed over. She was holding a manila folder, yellowed with age. Inside were documents, purchase agreements, bank transfers, handwritten notes. Lawrence grabbed the folder and flipped through it. His heart pounded. "This is it," he breathed. "This is the proof." The deed to the house. A bank statement showing the withdrawal from his personal account. Money he'd saved from his first job out of college. A letter from his mother confirming the purchase. Everything they needed. Marcus grinned. We did it. But Lawrence wasn't smiling. He was staring at the letter from his mother. At the date. At the words she'd written. Lawrence, I know you think buying this house back is about fixing the past. But it's not. It's about building a future. Whatever you do with this place, make sure it means something. Make sure it's filled with love, not regret. That's all that matters. His vision blurred. Mr. Whitmore? Kesha touched his arm. He pulled her into a hug, then pulled all three kids close. Thank you, he whispered. Thank you for not giving up on me. They drove back that night, the folder of documents sitting on the passenger seat like a treasure. Lawrence called his lawyer from the car. I found it. Everything we need. His lawyer exhaled in relief. Thank God. I'll file it first thing tomorrow morning. When they got back to the house, it was after midnight. The kids were exhausted. Lawrence drove them home, walking them to the door. Teresa opened it, worried. Where have you been? Saving the house, Marcus said simply. Teresa looked at Lawrence. He nodded. She didn't smile, but her expression softened. Get inside. It's late. As they filed past her, Kesha turned back. We're a good team. Lawrence smiled. The best. When he got back to the house, he sat on the porch and looked at the stars. The lawsuit would still happen. The battle wasn't over. But for the first time, he wasn't fighting alone. And that made all the difference. Lawrence has the documents. The proof is real. The lawsuit should be over. But nothing in life is ever that simple. Because when he walks into that courtroom with three kids who aren't legally his family, facing lawyers who built careers destroying men like him, he's about to learn that evidence isn't enough. The judge is about to ask him one question, a question that will force him to choose between the truth that saves the house and the lie that protects the kids. And whatever answer he gives will change everything. The moment of reckoning is here. Stay with me. The courtroom was cold, sterile, everything Lawrence had grown to hate about his old life. He sat at the defendant's table, his lawyer beside him, the folder of documents in front of them like a shield. Across the aisle sat three attorneys from Whitmore Industries. Sharp suits, sharper eyes. They weren't here to negotiate. They were here to destroy him. The kids sat in the gallery behind him. Lawrence had told them to stay home, but Marcus refused. We found those documents together, he'd said. We're seeing this through together. So here they were. Three kids watching a billionaire fight to keep a house that most people thought wasn't worth saving. The judge entered. Everyone stood. Judge Patricia Morrison, 60-something, reputation for being fair but ruthless. Be seated, she said, her voice carrying authority. The lead attorney for Whitmore Industries stood immediately. His name was Gerald Cross. Lawrence knew him well. They'd worked together for 15 years. Your Honor, Gerald began. This case is straightforward. Mr. Whitmore used corporate resources to purchase property under the guise of personal investment. We have documentation showing company funds were regularly moved into accounts used for this transaction. That's a lie, Lawrence said, louder than he intended. The judge's eyes cut to him. Mr. Whitmore, you'll have your chance to speak. His lawyer touched his arm, a warning to stay quiet. Gerald continued. Furthermore, Mr. Whitmore has shown a pattern of erratic behavior, abandoning his position, making irrational financial decisions, forming inappropriate attachments. Objection. Lawrence's lawyer stood. Relevance? I'm establishing mental state, Your Honor. A man who walks away from a billion-dollar empire to restore a condemned house is not making sound decisions. The judge considered. I'll allow it. But get to your point, Mr. Cross. Gerald nodded. Our point is simple. The property in question belongs to Whitmore Industries. We're asking for immediate transfer of the deed and vacation of the premises. Lawrence felt his blood boil, but his lawyer squeezed his arm again. Wait. Mr. Morrison, the judge said, addressing Lawrence's lawyer. Your response? Lawrence's lawyer stood, holding the folder. Your Honor, we have irrefutable evidence that Mr. Whitmore purchased this property with personal funds in 1978. Bank statements, transfer records, and a signed deed, all predating the formation of Whitmore Industries by 6 years. He handed copies to the judge and to Gerald's team. The courtroom went quiet as Judge Morrison reviewed the documents. Her expression didn't change. She was a stone wall. Finally, she looked up. These appear legitimate. Gerald stood quickly. Your Honor, we'd like to request an independent audit of these documents. Given the age and convenient timing of their discovery, the timing is irrelevant. Lawrence's lawyer cut in. The documents are real and legally binding. The judge raised her hand. I'm inclined to agree. However, I have questions for Mr. Whitmore directly. Lawrence's stomach dropped. Mr. Whitmore, please stand. He stood, his legs shaky. Judge Morrison looked at him over her reading glasses. Why did you buy this house? The question caught him off guard. I'm sorry? In 1978, you were a young man, recent college graduate. Why spend your savings on a foreclosed property? Lawrence swallowed. It was my childhood home. My family lost it when my father got sick. I wanted it back. And why wait 47 years to do anything with it? The courtroom felt like it was closing in. Lawrence could feel everyone's eyes on him. The lawyers, the judge, the kids behind him. Because I was ashamed, he said quietly. Of what? Of failing, of not being able to save my father, of not being enough. His voice cracked. I bought that house thinking I could fix everything. But when I realized I couldn't, I ran. I built a company, made money, convinced myself that success would erase the guilt. But it didn't. It just made me numb. The judge's expression softened slightly. What changed? Lawrence turned and looked at Marcus, Deshawn, and Kesha. They did. Explain. I went back to demolish the house, to finally erase the past. But I found 3 kids who'd been taking care of it. Planting roses, preserving something I'd given up on. They reminded me that some things are worth more than money. Worth more than pride. Judge Morrison nodded slowly. And these children? What is your relationship to them? Lawrence hesitated. This was the question he'd been dreading. They're not my children, he said carefully. Legally. But they're my family. Gerald stood immediately. Your Honor, this proves our point exactly. Mr. Whitmore has developed an unhealthy attachment to minors who have no legal connection to him. This speaks to his mental state. Sit down, Mr. Cross, the judge said sharply. She looked at Lawrence. Do their guardians know about your involvement? Yes, Your Honor. Their aunt approved. And you've provided financial support? College funds, legally protected trusts, They'll have access regardless of what happens to me. The judge was quiet for a long moment. Then she looked at the kids. Young man in the front, what's your name? Marcus stood nervously. Marcus Patterson, Your Honor. How old are you? 17. Why are you here? Marcus glanced at Lawrence. Because he kept his promise. What promise? To not leave. Everyone leaves. But he stayed. The judge's eyes moved to Deshawn. And you? Deshawn stood. Deshawn Patterson, 15. I'm here because Mr. Whitmore answers my questions, all of them, even the hard ones. Nobody else does that. Then Kesha stood without being asked. I'm Kesha. I'm 9. And I'm here because Mr. Whitmore makes me feel safe. The courtroom was silent. Judge Morrison took off her glasses and rubbed her eyes. When she looked up, her expression was unreadable. I've reviewed the evidence. The documents are legitimate. The property was purchased with personal funds. She paused. The lawsuit is dismissed. The house remains Mr. Whitmore's property. Relief crashed through Lawrence like a wave. But the judge wasn't finished. However, Mr. Whitmore, let me be clear. If I hear that you've abandoned these children or this commitment, I will personally ensure consequences. Do you understand? Lawrence's voice was strong. Yes, Your Honor, I understand. She banged the gavel. Case closed. The courtroom erupted. Gerald and his team packed up in fury. Lawrence turned to find the kids rushing toward him. They crashed into him in a group hug, all 3 of them, holding on like he was the only solid thing in the world. We won, Kesha whispered. No, Lawrence said, his voice thick with emotion. We survived. And that's better. The lawsuit is over. The house is safe. Lawrence won the battle everyone said he'd lose. But winning in court doesn't erase 47 years of running. It doesn't automatically heal broken trust or rebuild what was destroyed. And as Lawrence stands in front of that fully restored house with 3 kids who've become his family, he's about to face the hardest test of all, proving that this transformation wasn't temporary. That he's not the man who abandons what matters anymore. What happens next will determine if this story ends with redemption or just another rich man's fantasy that couldn't survive reality. This is where everything comes together. Let's finish this. 6 months had passed since the courtroom victory. The house was finished, completely restored. Fresh white paint, new windows, the porch rebuilt from the ground up. And the roses, they'd spread across the entire foundation, blooming brighter than ever. Lawrence stood in the driveway, looking at what they'd built together. It didn't look like the same place anymore. It looked alive. The kids were inside, putting the final touches on the living room. Their voices drifted through the open windows, mixed with laughter. Lawrence's phone buzzed. A text from Teresa. We need to talk, tonight. His stomach tightened. Those 4 words never meant anything good. That evening, after the kids went home, Teresa showed up alone. Lawrence met her on the porch, the same place where she'd confronted him months ago. What's wrong? He asked. Teresa sat down on the steps. I got a job offer. In California. Tech company. Double my current salary, benefits, stability. Lawrence's heart sank. That's amazing. It would mean moving, all of us. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. When? Lawrence asked quietly. They want me to start in 3 weeks? Lawrence sat beside her, his mind racing. California, 3,000 miles away. The kids would be gone. Everything they'd built together would be over. Are you taking it? He asked. Teresa looked at him. I don't know. That's why I'm here. What do the kids want? They don't want to leave, Marcus especially. He said this is the first place that's felt like home since his parents died. Lawrence's throat tightened. But I have to think about their future. This job could change everything for us. College would be easier. Life would be easier. Money doesn't fix everything, Lawrence said softly. Teresa laughed bitterly. Easy for a billionaire to say. Former billionaire. I gave most of it away, remember? To them. You set up those college funds. You gave them a future I never could have. Lawrence shook his head. I gave them money. You gave them love. There's a difference. Teresa was quiet for a long moment. What if I asked you to come with us? Lawrence looked up, surprised. What? To California. You could start over there too. The kids would have both of us. It could work. Lawrence looked at the house, at the roses, at the place he'd finally learned to call home. I can't leave, he said quietly. Why not? It's just a house. No, Lawrence said firmly. It's not. This house is where I stopped running, where I learned to face what I'd lost, where I became the man I should have been 47 years ago. He paused. If I leave now, I'm just running again, just in a different direction. Teresa nodded slowly, like she'd expected that answer. Then I guess that's it. Wait, Lawrence said. What if there's another option? Like what? What if you took the job, but the kids stayed here, with me? Teresa's eyes widened. You can't be serious. I am. I'll take legal guardianship. Make it official. They'll have stability, the house, their school, their friends. And you'll have the career opportunity you deserve. We can make it work. Lawrence, that's insane. Why? Because I'm not their biological family? Neither are you. But you showed up anyway. You did what needed to be done. He looked at her. Let me do the same. Teresa stood up, pacing. This is crazy. I barely know you. 6 months ago, I didn't trust you at all. And now? She stopped, looking at him. Now I see someone who kept every promise he made. Someone my kids talk about like he hung the moon. Someone who fought harder for them than anyone except me. Then let me keep fighting. Teresa's eyes filled with tears. What if you change your mind? What if this wears off and you realize you want your old life back? I won't. You can't know that. Lawrence pulled out his wallet and removed a photo. His mother and father standing in front of this house. He handed it to Teresa. My mother wrote me a letter before she died. She said this house wasn't wood and stone, it was love. And she was right. I spent 47 years running from love because I thought it made me weak. But these kids taught me it's the only thing that makes us strong. He paused, his voice thick with emotion. I'm not leaving them, not now, not ever. If you take that job, I'll be here. If you stay, I'll still be here. But either way, they'll have someone who shows up. I promise you that. Teresa wiped her eyes. I need to think about this. Take all the time you need. She left without another word. Lawrence sat alone on the porch, staring at the stars, wondering if he'd just made another mistake. The next morning, Teresa showed up with the kids. All 4 of them stood in the driveway. We talked, Teresa said, as a family, and we made a decision. Lawrence's heart pounded. I'm taking the job, Teresa said. Lawrence's chest tightened. But the kids are staying here, with you. Relief and terror crashed through him simultaneously. Are you sure? Marcus stepped forward. We're sure. Deshaun nodded. This is home. Kesha grabbed Lawrence's hand. You're home. Lawrence looked at Teresa. Thank you. Don't thank me, she said. Just don't screw this up. I won't. 3 weeks later, Teresa left for California. The kids moved into the house permanently. Lawrence officially became their legal guardian. The paperwork was signed. The rooms were ready. The family was real. That first night, they sat together on the porch, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and pink. You think Aunt Teresa's going to be okay? Kesha asked. She's going to be great, Lawrence said. You think we're going to be okay? Deshawn asked. Lawrence looked at each of them. Marcus, strong and steady. Deshawn, curious and brave. Kesha, innocent and wise. Yeah, Lawrence said, his voice certain. We're going to be more than okay. Later that night, Lawrence found one final envelope tucked under the roses. Inside was a note in his mother's handwriting. You came home, you stayed, you loved. That's all I ever wanted for you. Rest now, my sweet boy. You finally made it. Lawrence pressed the note to his chest and looked at the house, at the lights glowing warm through the windows, at the sound of the kids laughing inside, at the life they'd built from ruins. He'd lost a fortune, lost a company, lost the version of himself the world had celebrated. But he'd gained something infinitely more valuable. He'd gained a family, a home, a purpose. And for the first time in 47 years, Lawrence Whitmore was exactly where he belonged. Drop a comment below. What's the one thing you'd give up everything for? And where are you watching from? Thank you for staying with us until the very end.